Section. I am very excited to speak with you this morning, this evening, wherever you might be in the world. My name is Łukasz Pawłowski. I'm a program manager here on the Power BI team, and I'm responsible for many of our integrations into Microsoft Office. I'm excited to speak with you today about how meetings can become more effective when you add data to them, and share with you practices and tools that you can use powered by Power BI that enable you to deliver data in a very easy to use way for your entire workforce so that you can get the value of the data and then you can have actually increased likelihood of producing better outcomes. So we're going to talk a little bit about why meetings are critical and how Power BI helps you make better effective meetings. And then we'll also start showing you how to actually get started today. What we're going to do in terms of agenda, I'm just going to take control here and move forward. We're going to start by just giving the foundation for meetings. We'll talk about how to make them more effective. We'll show you some examples. We'll relate them to a particular job role. We've been sharing personas the last time we met. If you joined us, and if not, please go back and watch the recording. It'll give you a lot of foundation for what we're talking about in terms of using data to improve outcomes throughout your organization. But we'll introduce a persona, share like how in that person's role, using data in meetings could really make an impact. And then we'll show you a demo of three key capabilities. The new Power BI metrics capability that helps you and anyone actually in your organization track data over time, collaborate around it, meaning that you can stay more focused, be more transparent, and you can drive better outcomes. PowerPoint integration for Power BI. I'm sorry, if I could ask everyone to mute themselves, that'd be great. If you have a question, please put it in the chat and raise your hand if you'd like an immediate. Thank you. So we'll show how PowerPoint can help you, and Power BI's PowerPoint integration can help you bring interactive data visualizations to everyone in your organization, making a tighter feedback loop so that you can answer questions more quickly, pull through to the latest data more effectively. And then how all of that gets wrapped up is we use it in Microsoft Teams to broadly collaborate and share. And then we'll give you some getting started resources, and we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. All right. So where I'd like to start is with this question of what is the future of work? For those of you who are here last time, we already talked about this in more depth, but I'd always like to ground myself in this idea that, the way that everyone is working these days has fundamentally changed. Things that used to be done on a sheet of paper with a pencil and a pen now are done on a screen with a click and a tap. And what that means is that every activity, every process, every function, every job role that we have in our organizations produces data. And what that means is that the expectations of workers have changed. Every person in an organization is expected to be on top of the data, know everything about what's going on, know what the latest trends are, know what the latest activity is, and to be incorporating all that information actively into their day-to-day decisions. What should we do now? What should we do tomorrow? What should we do next month? And what we've also learned is that using data, just because there's so much of it, there's so many different solutions, really, it's a team sport. You need to work across your team. No single individual can understand all of the data. Even when data is presented, we need to ask questions about it, understand the context. And that collaborative nature of using data is very much what we call data culture, right? This idea that every day, every week, every month, we're actively using data and inquiring about data to make better decisions. And so as I think about that, I always come back to this idea that every single person in the organization needs to be empowered with data. And as leaders, we need to be thinking about how we're providing standardized data, but we're also providing tooling that enables everyone in the organization to harness that data, use it when they need it, and is simple enough that everyone can actually participate. It's not just a few people who have specialized skills, some data analysts, some database, or the database architect or a data scientist, but really broadly across all business functions, across all job roles, at every seniority level. It's not only the executive suite who can have a staff preparing data for them, it's also the department head or the team leader who can use data effectively. And so Power BI is designed from the ground up to support that by making sure that we have simple to use tools. And I'll show you examples today where just by typing in some data, a team leader, for example, could start tracking a metric. And we'll show you a couple of examples. Now, as we think about this is all in the context of a broader context, which is that Power BI is really bringing data and analytics everywhere people are working. And we're turning Microsoft 365 into a hub for insights. If you joined us last time, or if you watch the recording, you'll see that Power BI is integrated into Teams, into Outlook, into Office. And what that means is that data is one click away. Today, we're going to spend a little bit more time on PowerPoint, go a little bit deeper on Microsoft Teams. And we'll show you the new metrics capability that can be used throughout this ecosystem. For the metrics capability, we'll give you a small slice of what it can do today. And there's another session a little bit later in this program that will go into a much, much deeper dive on metrics. So with this context, let's now talk about meetings. And why is it important that we really think about meetings, their role in our organizations, and how they can make impact happen, or they can, not. So based on a study by Bain & Company that was published in Harvard Business Review, we can start asking ourselves the questions like, what is the actual cost of a recurring executive level meeting? So if I'm a CEO and I sponsor a weekly meeting, what is the actual cost across the organization of preparing that? And according to this study, there was significant cost in terms of hours of preparation. In fact, they estimated that when you start adding up not only the executive's time, all of the people, all the leaders that need to be part of that executive meeting, all of the support staff, all of the departmental levels and divisional levels down the stack to prepare for these meetings, it's actually a significant cost throughout the organization to prepare for a single weekly meeting series at the executive level. They estimated that at some organizations, especially larger ones, right, 300,000 hours of work could go into that over the course of a year with a substantial cost. And whether you're a big organization, you have many people, or even you're a small organization, we have to ask ourselves, are we using that time we have together and the preparation time to its maximal impact? And I think what's interesting is they started studying how more effective meetings impact various cases. And what was interesting here is that they noticed that in organizations that did things like they prepared for their meetings more, they actually found that total meeting hours decreased substantially. They found 17%. The amount of time in email decreased almost 20% in preparing for these meetings, which I think is very interesting because you can easily count the hours you spend in the meetings, but it's hard to count the hours you spend typing emails and handling any kind of follow-ups or preparation there. And the other thing that happened was the need for really large meetings where someone may be present but not engaged, decreased. And I think a lot of us, and certainly I personally in my career, have been in meetings where I'm a fly on the wall. I'm there to listen, but do I actually contribute in a tacit way during that 1 hour of that meeting? And the answer could be no, I'm just listening. And so could I be using my time in a more effective way? And this actually takes us to why effective meetings matter. If you look at many job roles, especially once you get into a manager role, right, or a team leader style role, you may be spending 47, 50% of your working day on an average day in meetings. And what that means is that time needs to be the most productive possible. And what we also learn is that if those meetings are prepared better, then what happens is people feel more satisfied coming out of those meetings, but also they feel that the meetings are more fun and engaging and more things get done. And a lot of it is about how well you prepared for that meeting. What context did you have walking into that meeting? And so when we talk about using Power BI in meetings, we really think through that lens. We think about how adding data to the meeting throughout the entire meeting cycle, before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting, can empower an organization. And I use this every day, right? What I do in my meetings, right, I have my Power BI reports added to my meetings. And what that means is that I'm enabling the people around me to be productive with the data. They can spot trends. They can bring those insights to me. We can discuss them before the meeting by sharing the data ahead of time and in a refreshable way. I have higher value conversations during my meetings because everyone's already familiar with the data. Or if they have a question during the meeting, they can quickly click over, do the investigation themselves without interrupting the conversation flow. It helps teams and management stay on the same page. This idea of being transparent and being focused on specific metrics, specific trends, helps align. It also means that everyone's looking at the same data, which means that fewer people are, saying, oh, I thought the number was this, and I thought the number was that. Oh, let's follow up and see which number is the right number. You establish the clarity of which number the team's going to use, and then the team can reflect on that number and say, what actions did we take, and did those actions have the impact on that number the way that we wanted to in the time frame that we wanted? And then having data where it's needed is really important. This idea that wherever I collaborate, we touched on this in the last session, where putting Power BI reports into your team's chats and channels was really important. Well, the same thing is true for meetings. Many of the meetings that we participate in are recurring meetings. They happen sometimes daily, but often weekly or monthly. And the context from week to week can be lost. Where is the report? How do I see the latest data? Has it been refreshed? All those questions come up, but having all of that data associated with that meeting or with the PowerPoint deck, that's the enduring PowerPoint deck, really becomes an enabler for the organization to use that data and reduce the friction. And lastly, this really emphasizing using data within meetings helps your organization focus on what's a reflection of reality versus what people's opinions are. And this is very important, especially with the way the world has been changing recently. With the supply chain issues that many of us have encountered, various macroeconomic situations. It's the things that used to work that we trained ourselves to do on a repeated basis that worked very well may not work as well anymore. And what we need to know is when's the right time to take a different approach, do an experiment, and learn from that. And the data, having the data as a reflection really helps get teams to embrace that kind of learning culture where data can support you. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about the phases of the meeting. So preparing for meetings is great. And there's really 3 phases we should be thinking about: before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Before the meeting, it's really important to make sure that the data is shared really, really early, and not in a static form. It should be shared in an interactive form. And the reason is that often data changes even within a week. And what that means is the day before, someone has to manually go create a new screenshot, has to send it out again. Everyone who thought they knew what the data was is now maybe surprised by that data. It's really important that that data is interactive and prepared and available so that everyone who's walking to the meeting can have the latest data from which to make inferences and decisions. And the second piece is that during the meeting, having the data live as opposed to a screenshot or just a static PowerPoint slide, what that means is that when there's a question about the data, you have a higher likelihood of being able to answer it immediately. Why was that number lower? Well, I'll show you an example in PowerPoint later where you can just click through from the PowerPoint slide straight to the interactive Power BI report. Or you can even embed the entire Power BI report as an appendix slide or even as a main slide and answer that question. That idea that during the meeting, you can answer questions and you no longer have to do follow-ups to answer those questions is really empowering throughout an organization. And then lastly, after the meeting, we really need to be thinking about capturing insights and actions, making sure that people are accountable for progress and accountable for progress with an objective measure. Because what that does is it's no longer did I complete the task, it's did the task I completed have the impact that we desired? And once we get good as organizations asking the second question, we're actually asking a higher value question. And because we're talking about the impact of actions, and that helps us ask better questions of which actions should we take, which ones are more likely to have the right impact in the available amount of time with the available resource. So this practice of using data throughout your meetings and making it a habit really helps you advance your data culture within your organization. And Power BI offers solutions that enable you to do this easily. And we'll talk about 3 of them here in some detail. One is this idea that you can create Power BI scorecards and use metrics on those scorecards to track specific data points over time and to collaborate on them. This capability is designed both so that anyone in your organization at any skill level can quickly get access to your data and start using this scorecard capability with very minimal technical skill. As well, it integrates all the way up into Viva goals so that if you want to have a top-down and bottom-up metrics or OKR style solution, you can do that with top-down metrics as well as top-down goals, and refreshable metrics from Power BI working together. I won't show you that integration in this session, but we'll cover it in a future session. The second one is around PowerPoint. Many of us, especially if we're in management or leading projects, we live and breathe PowerPoint. We use them for status reports. We use them to drive conversations and structure presentations. And now you can actually bring interactive data directly into your PowerPoint. So you're no longer dealing with static images that get out of date. They might be blurry. You can now see the latest data. You can interact with it. I'll show you how this can transform meetings because it even helps you summarize the data. We'll see some really cool examples. And lastly, in Microsoft Teams, where you can take data that you have and organize it and make it broadly available and be transparent about how you're using and what data you're using for specific meeting series, empowering your entire organization. So let's do one level deeper here. So when we talk about Power BI metrics and Power BI scorecards, this is a relatively new capability, so I wouldn't be surprised if some of you are not familiar with it yet. What it does is a scorecard allows you to assemble a group of metrics. You can organize them and you can assign those metrics to people or sets of people in your organization. What that means is you can drive transparency and accountability. The scorecard will track data over time for you, where you can set targets and objectives, especially time-bounded targets. I'll show you an example of that here in a little while. And what's important about this is that metrics help you drive a process around your data on a daily, weekly, monthly cadence. You can check in on your scorecard and you can see, are you making the progress? Are the actions that you're taking having the impact that you desire? It really helps you make data culture very tangible for every job role because it's straightforward and it's very flexible. It can work with any of the data that we have in Power BI. The second piece is around PowerPoint, where we can bring fully interactive Power BI reports and visuals directly into your PowerPoint presentations. I think this is a game changer because what it does is that interactive data lets you ask that subsequent question. When you share your PowerPoint, let's say you send it after a meeting, everyone who receives that PowerPoint is able to see the latest data and critically click through to the underlying data. So for example, let's say you're onboarding a new person onto your team and they need to ramp up. And what you do is you send them the last few presentations that were presented about team status. Well, just imagine what happens if that person sees an interactive report as opposed to a static report. Imagine if when they see a line that says something went well, they can actually see the live data to support that and drive into that context. And for the next time, if they need to prepare that presentation in the future, they know exactly what data to use. It's really, really a compelling use case, and I'll highly recommend you give it a shot. And third is how all of this comes together when you add data into your meetings. Of course, you can add it to a presentation and send a pre-read or add it to the meeting as a file. But you can also just go ahead and add Power BI reports, scorecards, organizational apps directly into your meetings, which increases the visibility of the data, not only through some centralized communication that you do, but very, very granularly with the right data for the right meeting. I call this creating little mini data hubs that help your organization be successful. I really highly encourage you to give this a try. It helps everyone find that data. So Let's now take a look at how these capabilities can help someone in a job role. And let me introduce you to Jose. Jose is a human resources analyst. So when Jose wakes up in the morning, you could imagine he's thinking about how he's going to take data about, let's say, diversity inclusion initiatives, even workforce skilling, the talent pipeline, and are we hiring and retaining the right people to support the next level of performance for the organization, right? He's thinking about how he's enabling the organization with data to make the best decisions, the right hiring decision, the right promotion decision, the right training decision. And so he's really thinking about aligning ownership of specific outcomes, like, hey, let's make sure that our hiring pipeline improves in this particular department, with team goals up and down and can communicate it. He's thinking about transforming the organization by setting specific KPIs. Maybe there's a new technology the entire organization should learn about, or maybe there's an area where we need a certain kind of talent. There's a job role that we're under hiring, and we need to go rectify that in a given time. So setting up KPIs to make sure that the organization's is set up for success. Driving and visualizing those changes so that everyone's aware and knows who needs to do which activity and in what time frame. And then tracking all of this, sharing the insights, and making sure that all of that is embedded within all the presentations that are happening within their organization. And so when Jose tries to do these activities, he can actually do a lot more and faster with Power BI. Right? First, when he's thinking about assigning, and KPIs and tracking things, he can just use the Power BI metrics and scorecarding capability to do that. And he doesn't need a technical foundation. As an human resource analyst, he may not have the technical skill to build a full data warehouse or build a report even. But the metrics capability, which I'll show you in a second, is so straightforward that Jose can easily do it and grow with it over time. By driving tasks through, for example, scorecards and Microsoft Teams, he can drive activity through activity feed notifications. I'll show you an example of that a little bit later. And what that means is that the team just moves towards the attainment of the objectives a little bit faster with a little bit less friction. Ensuring that weekly progress happens. Well, just imagine what happens if Jose can quickly add that data into a PowerPoint or add that data into a team meeting using a scorecard, for example. This really helps Jose remove manual work that he might have needed to, copy and paste things over, every week, look up those data points every week. All he needs to do is just put the data where he's working in a PowerPoint, in a Teams meeting, in a scorecard. And then every week he just looks at it and then spends less time gathering data and more time analyzing, finding insights, and communicating actions. So with that, I wanted to start with a demo. And in the demo, we'll see 3 specific capabilities. We'll do an introduction to Power BI metrics, and this will show you how to track data over time, how easy it is to get started, and some basics about setting goals and tracking them over time. A second is how to use interactive reports and visuals in PowerPoint. It's a great capability, and hopefully you'll be able to transform your PowerPoints. Even today, it's available in your tenant. So we could go to take a look at it, and then we'll see how Microsoft Teams brings it all together. So with that, let me jump into the demo, and I'm going to share my screen. All right. Where I'm going to start the demo is I'm going to start in Microsoft Teams. And this is probably where a lot of us start our days. Some of us might start our days here in Office. And one of the things we saw last time is that Power BI is fully integrated right here. And you'll see that Power BI is right here on the left nav in Teams, right alongside my calendar, calls, and files, even my Viva tools that I might be using. And when I click into Power BI, I have a full range of capabilities here. So in this case, I'm looking at a scorecard. I'll come back to this in a second, but importantly, the full range of Power BI, all the recommended content, all the recent things that I've used. I even have a data hub here where I can go find any of the data that's authoritative and up to date. And critically, there's a metrics capability right here. You can see that I have this metrics capability in Power BI. Now, what's interesting is when I click on this metrics capability, I get a hub for all of the metrics that are important to me. I can see recommended metrics throughout my organization. I can follow a metric if it's important to me. And importantly, I can see ones that are assigned to me so I can know which ones I need to work on. So these are 3 that I need to work on. You can see that I have 2 that are not started, one's on track. And this allows me to quickly go through to each one of these items. So let me just go through to the store scorecard. And notice that when I clicked through, it immediately took me to that particular item. I have a trend, I have a number, I can see day over day change. Let's talk a little bit more about all of these things. But you notice how quickly and how easy it was for me as just someone working on doing my job to quickly get to the place where I can take an action that will advance the objectives of my organization. Now, this capability, as we saw last time, is also available, for example, when you navigate through in office.com. It's also available in Outlook in the same way. And in each case, you notice how I was looking at the store scorecard over here in Microsoft Teams. And when I opened Power BI in Office, we took you right back to that same scorecard to continue your work in the flow of the work. So no matter which tool you're using, where you're context switching, we try to make it very, very easy to use Power BI across. And so now I'm in Office, but I'm still using the same scorecard. Let's dig in a little bit about the capabilities of the scorecard. So the first thing that you'll notice is that the scorecard is fully integrated into sharing and Teams. And what that means is that I can quickly collaborate with my colleagues about the data that I have here. When I click on a particular metric, I can see its trend. I can see how it's doing month over month. I can see what its targets are. If I have a set of target, I can see how it's trending. And critically, I can see whether its status. So in this case, this particular metric is at risk and it's assigned to Megan. I can look at the history of that metric, what the updates were at various times. And you can see that I, a couple of hours ago, turned this from not started to at risk. So that's something that we can go follow up on. I can look at it in various time periods. I can also connect this to a particular report. So you can see here that I'm connected to the executive scorecard report, and I can always click through to see the underlying data for this particular metric. What's important is, and you can see it here under the notes with this little icon, is that you can actually have conversations and do check-ins for these metrics. So if I scroll down here, you can see that I have metrics and check-ins. I can make sure that we're mentioning people to drive activity. So for example, here, I could go and add a note and just @mention Megan. Right, so I can just send a quick note to Megan, and Megan will receive a notification on that. And when Megan replies, we'll see it here in the check-in history as well. And what this means is that I can drive very clear, accountable processes using this metrics capability. This little bar here at the top is also very handy because I can just focus my team on those items that are at risk, for example. Or if I want to look at items that are not started and we need to see like who I should ask to take action, I can see all these things. And so by using this capability, I can really focus on the conversation on the metrics that matter the most and the activity and actions that can have the biggest impact. Now, if you're new to scorecarding, you can actually go and create a scorecard very easily. When I press and I enter into edit mode here, I'll just go ahead and press this new button. And I have different options. Now, today I'm going to show you this option here around new metric. In the next session, we'll go into a little bit deeper, but you can see that I can link it to other metrics. I can use sub metrics. I can even set up hierarchies. very powerful capabilities as you start expanding the use of metrics, but we're just going to start with the basics for the sake of today's demo. So when I have a metric, I can just go ahead and add a new name. So my first metric, and you'll notice that I can have it assigned to a person here, and I can actually assign it to multiple people. So let's say Megan and I need to share this metric. So I'll just assign it there. Now, when we talk about starting with very little skill, this is a key thing. Let's say this metric just has a current value of 100, and I know that because I received an email or I looked at an online system. I can just start by creating a metric just by clicking in through here with absolutely no technical skill whatsoever. And now I've set up a metric. If I press save, it's on track. It has a due date. It has clear ownership. Every week, if I wanted to, I can manually go and update this. But Power BI will track this metric and track the trend of the metric. You can see here it only has one data point, but as time goes by, we'll add more data points. And it's just that easy that all I did to create my very first metric was just typed in data. And this is really important because for a lot of people, they struggle to build this kind of a system. They use an Excel spreadsheet. They then have to create custom charts to track the trend over time. Tracking activity and progress is very difficult. All of this metric just allowed me to do that very, very easily. But there's a lot of power here. So if I go into this metric and I edit it, you can see that right now I'm using a manual metric, but there are other options. You can do roll-ups using submetrics. I won't show that to you today. We'll talk about it when we do a deeper dive on metrics. But importantly, you can connect to data, and that's the option I'm going to choose here. What's interesting about this is that I can come in here and I can quickly go pick a particular report that I have access to. And you notice that I can see all my recents, my favorites. I can even see things shared with me or organizational apps that have been published. And when I pick that particular item, I'll see that the whole report renders here. And I can just go ahead and pick any of the data points that are on this chart. So in this case, I've picked this chart, and you'll notice that all of the data that's used in this chart is available to me. So in this case, there's sales, there's quantity and quantity last year. And so I just pick sales. And you'll also notice that I'm able to pull in, track all of the data in this time series. So if I have existing reports that have time trends, I can just pull them in right away and we'll pull in the history. If I don't, that's also okay. We can just track this data point and the scorecard will build its own history of that data. So let's see what happens when I go in and connect that. So now that I've connected, you'll notice that the current value has been pulled in. We can set the target, let's say 400, and then we'll go and save it. And now you'll notice that we've actually pulled in the latest data here. We've also pulled in, apologies for that, the trend for that metric here. And what this means to me is that I don't have to manually update my scorecard anymore. I can just quickly click through, analyze the data, and then drive the actions to track sales. Maybe I need to follow up with a particular region. Maybe I need to, ask a person why a particular dip happened, confirm that seasonality is affecting my sales, or whatever that might be. I can go do that. Now it actually gets even more interesting here, because not only can I do this on trends like this. Let's just go ahead and create another metric. I can actually do the same thing on very detailed data points. So this time I'm going to pull a little finance data set here. And in this case, you'll notice that I have a big revenue chart. And of course, I can pull in gross sales as a top line number. But let's take a look at some of the regions here. I can look at Asia Pacific or Europe. Let's say I'm responsible for Germany. Okay, I can actually go and pick the specific line. You'll notice that I picked the line for Germany, and you'll notice that the metric will be pulled in specific to Germany. And so what I can do is I can now say, pull that number in and say gross sales for Germany. And here I am. I can set my target. Let's say it's 100 million. I could, of course, set up the target to be dynamic. Let's say I've got KPIs or goals that are tracked somewhere. I can do that. I can set up a status for it. Let's say I'm on track. I can even use rules to set up that status so it'll automatically set it so that I don't have to even manually do that. And in this way, I've actually gone ahead and pulled in this gross market for gross sales for Germany. And you'll notice I only pulled in a single data point. But over time, this will get in here. The other thing that I can do for a lot of for these metrics is when I edit the metric, I can go ahead and set targets. And so if I look at the targets here, I can set some targets. And so, for example, I could go and I could say, hey, right now the target is going to be, I need to build a plan for this. So let's say I want to get to 85 by June 4th. I want to get to 95 by let's say August 1st and 2023, and then let's say I want to get to my goal of 100 by October 10/1. Great. And let's just go 100 by 12. 1, 23. Perfect. Okay. So I've got all of these set up here. I've made a mistake somehow. Let's try this. All right.
You have 100 twice.
Yeah, that's okay. I got it. Yeah, so let me set that up here. And when I come in here, if I press this show targets, I guess I've expressed this in millions, but I've set my targets in hundreds. All right, well, demo gods have interfered with me, but you can see that these targets are actually laid out here on this chart as well. And what's amazing is that just tracking those targets is really, really, really easy for me. And now when we think about this metrics capability, we also have to think about how we can take these data points and bring them into the presentations that we have. So now I'm going to switch over and I'm going to show you an example of using this retail management report right here from, or in this case, I'm starting from Microsoft Office. I could be in Teams. I could just be in the Power BI service in the web browser, wherever I might be using Power BI. Let's say I'm preparing for an executive presentation and I need to create a slide that shows the data that I have. In this case, maybe I'm interested in the West region data, and I'm interested, to talk about like December. Okay. What's amazing here is that I can quickly take this report and export it and include it here into PowerPoint. Right. So you can see embed live. I can, of course, generate a static image, but this embed live data is much more interesting. And I can actually embed the entire report page. I'll show you that in a second. But I can also just go ahead and share and pull this particular visual, whether I can copy the link to the visual, I can share it to Teams, or I can open it in PowerPoint. And so I'm going to use that open in PowerPoint option here. And what's happening is when I open it, I can, of course, copy the link to it, or I can just press the Open in PowerPoint button. And what that's doing is it's downloading a file onto my local computer. And here's the PowerPoint file that it opened. And it immediately loads that specific visual. What you'll notice is that it actually has kept my highlight for December because that's the data point I want to talk about. And just that quickly, I was able to create this fully interactive Power BI report. I can click on any of these data points. I can mouse over to see tooltips. I can add more capabilities. Like, for example, I can look at the filters. And of course, I can always click back through to the underlying source report in my Power BI so that if I want to see the further data about this particular data point, I can go do that. What's amazing here is that I'm actually able to not only use the visualizations, the interactivity of those visualizations, I can use high value experiences like this AI summary experience. And so let's take a look at how this works. So when I click on this data insights option, you'll notice that it's generated for me a summary of this data. And it knows that we're talking about December. So because that's the data point that I have highlighted, and it's focusing on December. And it's giving me a range of how much this has improved versus February of last year. And if I like this summary, or if it just has the data points that I want to get started with, I can immediately paste it on a slide or copy it to clipboard. This is great because if I'm preparing the presentation, I can just quickly bring this summary here onto the page, adapt its styling however I desire using PowerPoint styling capabilities. And maybe this is all that I need to prepare my presentation. But also, when I receive this slide, maybe I'm interested in some other data point. I can also use that same data insights capability and copy to clipboard, and I can start asking the questions about my data with the people through email or chat or whatever collaboration forum or tool that I'm using. So in this way, I create this fully interactive visual, no screenshot, the data's up to date. If I have a recurring meeting, I can immediately update next time slides just by doing this data. And if I want to lock this down and say, okay, what is a copy of the data? I can always do that using PowerPoint's save as an image capability. There's a lot more you can do in here too. You can change some formatting options. There's also some filtering options that you can do. But importantly, you can apply your refresh and get the latest data. Let's take a look at another example of how this helps. Let's say you may be expecting that someone's going to ask you a question about this data. Now, you're providing a summary to keep the conversation focused and the insights clear. But let's say you also want to make sure that people can explore this data. Just by inserting the PowerPoint or Power BI from the PowerPoint, you can immediately create a new slide. And all you need to do is paste a link. So let's go back to our report here. And let's grab the link for the entire report page. So I'll just copy the link and I'll paste it in here. And what's interesting is that now I have a fully interactive report. Again, we preserved what filters you were on by default. But if I'm interested in something else, like let's say I'm interested in only this Raymond Bush person and understanding how they're tracking, or I want to click on, Alan Dominguez, I can go do that. Or maybe I'm not interested in West, I'm interested in Central. I can go pull in those data and make those comparisons, all without leaving my PowerPoint. What that means is that how many of us have been in a meeting where we present an insight and says, yeah, but what about the Central region? Well, I can go answer that question immediately without leaving my presentation because I added the live data here into PowerPoint. This kind of capability, which removes manual work and replaces with refreshable authoritative data, really helps your organization. Everyone who receives that slide deck knows exactly which reports to use and which data points to use to inform their next set of decisions. And they're not hunting, they're not chasing people to figure out where'd you get that data point from. It's all in the slide deck. The efficiency that this can bring is substantial for organizations. So this is a great example of how we can transform meetings and also transform the artifacts we're creating, the work product we're creating, where we're creating PowerPoint presentations to support our work. So now let's take a look quickly at how all of this comes together in Microsoft Teams. So in Microsoft Teams, we just switch back. We're again on this scorecard. But let's take a look at our calendar. And many of us organize our meetings here in Teams. And here I have a weekly execution review on my calendar. In this review, we've actually prepared for this meeting by adding a number of Power BI items right here to the top. And I'll show you them all here in a second. But importantly, it's really easy to go at it. I just go and I search for Power BI. I pick the Power BI items that I desire, and I can go ahead and find the item that's important, and I can just go ahead and add it. So let's just go ahead and add this retail management, or let's add the sales pipeline report. Okay. So now what we have is we have a new Power BI tab here, and the meeting itself, anyone who's invited to the meeting, has access to this tab. So they can hopefully they have access, or they can request access to the reports. But importantly, as people join your team, as the participation in your meeting changes, you bring people in, people leave, all the new people have access to the same reports quickly and easily. They're not looking for them. They're not trying to find out where they were. They're always available. And you can actually use this as a habit of process. You can use chat in teams to drive conversations to make sure that key insights are prepared. You can bring your scorecards right here into the meeting context so that you can focus on those things that matter the most. Like, let's say, you need to make sure that the team starts acting on the things that haven't started yet. You can just bring this up during your meeting and say, okay, let's start this. Next time, Megan, if you could provide an update on these two. Alex, could you provide an update on the productivity index? And what's amazing about all these experiences as well is that throughout this, Power BI is generating activity to support your productivity. And so here, for example, Megan edited a check-in on this scorecard, and I can go see what that was right away. If someone shared a report to me, it automatically shows up here in my activity feed. What that means is that I see that data more quickly and I can act on that. And of course, we saw last time that you can go pin it to a meeting or pin it to a channel. So you can take it and add it to all the right places. So in this way, we have provided capabilities that make it really, really easy throughout your experience, right? To start using data, even if you have no technical skill, bring it into PowerPoints so that everyone has access to the fully interactive data, and of course, add it into your team meetings. All right, so let's jump out of this and finish up with a few slides. Jody, would you like to share again the deck and advance to where we were?
I'll do that.
And while we get the deck set, if you do have any questions you'd like me to answer, please do write them into the chat so I can get answer them here in the time that remains. All right.
So you've already taken the control. Okay.
Yeah, great. I took the control. Yeah. In the demo, what we saw how metrics is really easy and engaging for people, right? Drives activity and progress and transparency. We saw how PowerPoint helps you shift from manual export-based workflows into automated refreshable workflows that drive greater clarity and visibility throughout your organization. And we also saw how preparing your meetings in Microsoft Teams really helps your organization as meeting participation changes to always be empowered with the data they need to make the next and best decisions. Now, of all the things that I showed you, metrics and teams should be available to you already in your organization unless you've turned them off. If you have, please do turn them back on. They're really great capabilities. The PowerPoint add-in I showed you does need to be enabled by your Microsoft 365 administrator. And the way to do that is you head over to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. In the Settings tab, there's an Integrated Apps tab. And you can go and say, Get Apps, and then choose the Power BI integration. And you need to choose the host product that's PowerPoint. So that's a great capability. If you're using Power BI already, I highly recommend you just go get this turned on today. With that, let's open up for a couple of quick polls. So Jay, would you like to push the poll? Great. Now you should see a dialog come up on your screen with a couple of check boxes. Please do check those boxes and reply, and we can track here what the responses are. And meanwhile, I see a couple of questions come in. Does one of future session covers the basic of building visuals and reports? Yes, it does. And that's actually the next session that we'll go into how to go create reports if you've never done it before, which is great. And then what would happen if I'm in a meeting with someone who should not have access to Power BI? For example, someone external. Yeah, it's a great question. They won't have access. So what we do is we make sure that no matter where you put all of these things, whether it's in a PowerPoint, whether it's in a team, whether it's in Outlook, it's all secured with the same organizational security policies that you've set on that content. And you can do many things, right? You can, one, just do basic permissions. Can people view? You can set up Microsoft information protection labels. So for example, you can say that this content should only be viewed by people in your organization. So that if you export data and it's shared around, it won't be visible because it'll be encrypted. So you can set that up through Microsoft information protection labels and policies. And then if you have enterprise data sets, you can actually go one step deeper, which is you can set up row-level security and object-level security inside your data set, which means that even if two different people in your organization have access to the same report, one person may see data, the other one may see no data or only a subset of data that's relevant to their role. So we really go the extra mile for all these experiences to make sure security is preserved throughout. And so the results of the poll is actually very evenly split. That's very interesting, is that it's almost an exact third for all three capabilities. I think what's important here is that these capabilities, they apply to each of our individual styles, our organizational styles. So it's important to share all of them with your teams because one division or one team may like to use one way, another one use another way. And helping them understand their options and helping them adopt is really a critical step forward. So with that, let me give you a couple of hints on how to get going, right? So one is, the real thing to do is to get your organization started. Using Microsoft Power BI in Office is a really easy way to bring it through. Just by starting to share, for example, PowerPoints that have live charts, you will build a habit for other people to do the same thing. It's important to show and tell, and we'll share some resources here in a second for how to do that. But it's really important for a lot of us to help our organizations see these options. For many people, they don't even know they can use this today, especially if you're an E5 customer. You can use all of this today. And for many organizations that have adopted Power BI Premium, they can do all of this today. But a lot of the individual workers or the department heads or the project leads, they don't actually know they can do that yet. So it's important to take that step. And I think using meetings, and the reason this is like the second topic is because meetings and the recurring rhythm of business, the weekly, monthly, quarterly activities that we do really set the tenor and tone and really set how people engage in our organizations. And so by moving this lever, making it more data-driven, you're really driving a long-term impact and broad impact across your organization. So it's really important to start there. This slide you'll have access to in the slide deck. It has all the links for how to get started with all the capabilities we're showing throughout the Data Hub, and including the metrics capabilities and the PowerPoint capabilities. This gives you a key set of actions that you can take if you'd like that will help you get started. With PowerPoint specifically, you'll need to work with your Microsoft 365 administrator to enable that. But you can see across all the things that we'll talk about in the Customer Hub where you can get started. In terms of helping you with training, we have three really good offers for you. The first is free online training that you can literally send this link to anyone in your organization today, and they today can start getting trained for free. It's really a compelling set of resources. Second is we are working on a set of resources to help you run internal training sessions. For example, you might invite people over a lunch meeting with a brown bag style meeting to share about a particular technology. We're going to have a set of presentations that you can deliver to your organization to help share. And then lastly, if you'd like, we can arrange for a Microsoft-led training for a group of people at your organization. This is a little bit higher touch, a little bit more tailored to what your organization needs, but it's a great way to bootstrap some of these changes.